and gentlemen, it is Thursday, which means we have wide receiver, tight end, and defense rankings coming out to you guys today, and football tonight. In this video, we're going to go over the top 36 options at wideout so that you know your wide receiver ones and twos, and then which flex options are available and might be the best to insert into your lineups so that we can dominate this weekend together. Please drop any start-sit questions down below so I can help you out. You can also reach out to me on the Sleeper app. I would love to engage with you there. If you are new to the channel, or if you haven't gotten to it yet, please like and subscribe. It helps me out a ton, enables me to do what I love so I can keep bringing you the content that you love. Without any further ado, let's get into Week 8's wide receiver rankings. Claiming the top spot this week all the way up at number 1 is my little Cooper Kupp. He goes on the road to face the Texans. Now, in more than half of his games this year, Kupp has finished as the wide receiver 1 or 2. That is absolute dominance, my friend. I am beginning to think that Kupp was the mastermind behind the trade that sent Stafford to LA. Their connection is special. At 2, it's Stephon Diggs at home against Miami, and Diggs is going to make it back-to-back weeks, finishing in the top 10 against a Miami Dolphins secondary that is allowing 43 points a game to wideouts. Look for Miami to get decimated early and often as Allen finds Diggs. To round out our top 3, we have Jamar Chase going on the road to face the Jets. And after recording 200 yards last week, I'm not really sure what kind of superpower Jamar Chase has, but he's really good at hiding it. He has gone full-on supernova. We move on to number 4, and that's Justin Jet Jefferson at home against the Cowboys. I personally never attempted the gritty, but it sure looks like a good time. Jet is going to show us the right way to do it this week after a 2-week absence from hitting pay dirt. The bottom 6 wide receiver defense in Dallas will make sure of it. Deebo Samuel is up next. He goes on the road to face the Bears. Deebo has been a top 10 wide receiver and recorded over 100 yards in half of his games. His name is fun to say, and he gets a bottom 5 defense, allowing over 41 points a game to receivers. All of these statements are truth. His game is too. Tyreek Hill at home against the Giants is our 6th ranked player, and like the rest of the Chiefs offense, he has hit a bit of a rough patch as of late. He hasn't surpassed 76 yards in any of his last 3 games, even though he's had 11 targets per in that time. Mahomes is going to help get him right this week. At 7, it's A.J. Brown on the road facing the Colts, and he has heated up in the last couple weeks ever since we had him as a bye. He has 18 targets and 15 catches for 224 yards and a touchdown in those last 2 games. With Indy's bottom 10 passing defense up next, Smokey's gonna be a little upset. Next up at 8, it is DeAndre Hopkins at home against the Packers. Nuke has 3 straight finishes in the top 16, and he has scored in all of those games. With the cornerback room in Green Bay quite a bit of a mess right now, I think Nuke takes advantage. We move to number 9, and that is CeeDee Lamb on the road against my Vikings. Lamb has been on fire over his last 2 games and has busted just once all year, even with a varying target share. There is no one in Minnesota that has close to the talent that can stick with him, and I think both the volume and the production come again this week. We round out our top 10 with a little bit of a gamble. It's Mike Williams at home against the Patriots. Williams busted like the rest of the Chargers did in their last game, week 6, against the Ravens. He played that game banged up. Now he's had some time to heal, and I think even though he's been boom or bust lately, he's had 3 finishes in the top 10 in the last 5 games, so you roll the dice. Next up at number 11 for us is Chris Godwin on the road against New Orleans. Last week he absolutely exploded, finishing as wide receiver 6, and now it looks like Antonio Brown is going to be out at least 1 more week after being seen on crutches on Tuesday. That means at least double-digit targets here for Godwin and a great chance at an encore performance. Our final wide receiver one is DJ Moore on the road against Atlanta. Now, hopefully this matchup is what he needs to get right. However, it's probably more likely that the quarterback situation is the culprit. Moore should still get over 100 yards for the first time since week 4. We move on to Terry McLaurin going on the road to face the Broncos. He is our 13th ranked player. Scary Terry has 2 top 5 finishes in his last 4 games and is averaging 11 targets per during that span. He does face a tough challenge as Denver has a top 10 passing defense. Featured in our bye video earlier on in the week, in at 14 is Calvin Ridley at home against the Panthers, who have allowed more points to wide receivers in the last 2 weeks than any team in the NFL. Now, if I keep calling it, it's gonna work, right? This is going to be Calvin Ridley's breakout game of the 2021 season. Bippity boppity boo. We move to number 15, where we have Deontay Johnson going on the road to face Cleveland. When Johnson plays, he produces, and this week against Cleveland will be no different. He's the go-to guy in the passing game, and he has seen double-digit targets in all but 1 game. He has plenty of upside and has finished as a top 20 pass catcher in 4 straight games. Next up at 16 is another bye for me this week, and that is Keenan Allen at home against the Patriots. Allen has seen just 14 targets in his last 2 after seeing 23 targets in the 2 before that. I expect double-digit targets in this game and the resurgence to begin. We move next to Amari Cooper, our 17th ranked player, going on the road to face my Vikings. This is a decent matchup for Cooper, and he has seen increased targets in his last 2 games, which is great news for owners, with 2 finishes in the top 24 in his last 3 games. Moving to number 18, it is DK Metcalf at home against Jacksonville. There is so much risk here, that much is clear. However, the reward is too much to pass up. Jacksonville doesn't have anyone on the same wavelength that can hope to cover DK. The problem is, can Geno get him the ball? In at number 19, it's Adam Thielen at home against Dallas, and prior to their bye in week 7, Kirk Cousins made it a point to get the ball to Thielen. On 13 targets, he had 11 catches for 126 yards and a score. Minnesota is going to need more of that to keep up with Dallas. The last player in our top 20 is Mike Evans on the road against the Saints. Marshawn Lattimore will almost certainly shadow Evans here, which is terrifying for owners. Thankfully, the GOAT is throwing him passes, so he will still have opportunities, and there's always the hope of a broken play, like DK Metcalf had last week against Lattimore that went 84 yards to the house. Next up, at 21, it is Michael Pittman Jr. at home against the Titans. With T.Y. Hilton either out or far less than 100% in this game, Pittman's going to have more opportunities to produce points. He has 229 yards and a pair of scores in his last 3 games. At number 22, it is Robert Woods facing the Texans on the road. And the Texans have been a sneaky good defense against wideouts, allowing the 6th fewest points per game in the entire league. However, the way that LA's offense is humming along, you have to play Bobby Trees in this one. Aggressively ranked all the way up at 23, Emmanuel Sanders gets the Dolphins, who are allowing nearly 43 points a game to wideouts. Sanders has been on absolute fire over his last 4 games with 313 yards and 4 touchdowns, all while averaging over 6 targets a game. The final wide receiver 2 for us this week, T. Higgins goes on the road to face the Jets. Now, Higgins saw 15 targets last week, which owners love to see. However, he was only able to produce 62 yards with that giant workload. The Jets are a tough matchup, but Higgins is going to see plenty of opportunities. Falling down to number 25 is Courtland Sutton at home against the football team. I think that Sutton's target share is about to take a massive hit with the return of Jerry Jeudy, and that is why he has dropped so far in our rankings. It's quite a shame because Sutton was balling out with 284 yards, 30 targets in his last 3. We move on to Devonta Smith on the road to face the Lions. He is a 26th ranked player. Smith has had a hard time corralling passes from Jalen Hurts all year. However, the volume has been there as he has 32 targets in his last 4 games, so we buy the volume. On to 27, and it's Chase Claypool. Now, this is a good matchup, and Claypool will continue to be peppered with targets. He did a ton with them in week 5, finishing as the wide receiver 10, but had one more target in week 6 and had 17 total yards. Such is life with the shell of the quarterback formerly known as Big Ben. As we move down the list, we start to take on more risk as we look at some of our flex options. At 28, it is Marvin Jones on the road to face the Seahawks. Prior to his bye last week, Jones had the best game of his season, racking up 100 yards on 10 targets with a touchdown, and he looks like Trevor Lawrence's favorite target right now. Brandon Cooks gets the Rams at home this week. He is our 29th player. There is major concern here that Jalen Ramsey shadow covers Cooks. However, the good news is that at least Tyrod Taylor might be back and save the Texans from the nightmare that is Davis Mills. Rounding out the top 30, it is Jalen Waddle on the road facing the Bills. Since Tua's return, Waddle has 21 targets, 153 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now this is an absolutely brutal matchup, but someone has to catch balls for Miami, and it looks like Waddle has Tua's trust. Next up at 31, it's Julio Jones on the road against the Colts. Julio played just 29 snaps as he was fighting through that hamstring injury. With an extra week to rest up, he should see more targets and usage and feel a lot better than he did last week. But there's certainly risk. Next up at 32, it is Jerry Jeudy at home against Washington, and he is making his return after he suffered a high ankle sprain in week 1. Jeudy gets a wonderful gift in a dumpster fire defense known as Washington. Our 33rd ranked player is Jacoby Myers on the road facing the Chargers. This is definitely a tough matchup, but Myers has 18 targets in his last 3 games. He also has gone under 44 yards just once all season, and Mac Jones is starting to look like he's getting it together. Laviska Shenault on the road against Seattle is next at 34. This is a decent matchup for Shenault, and he's had 20 targets over his last 3 games, turning that into 213 yards. He has yet to score, but this might be the week that he does. We have back-to-back Cardinals to finish off our top flex options. It starts with Christian Kirk against Green Bay, and he has scored in back-to-back games and has 18 targets in his last 3. In this offense, that is worth a start. He has 4 top 20 finishes in 7 games, so there's certainly upside. Next at 36, the final player on our list is AJ Green, and he has 66 or more yards in 4 out of his last 5. We love that solid floor. He's also due for a score since he's been on and off all year long, if that's something that you believe in. We will finish off our video with a couple notable omissions. The first one is Tyler Lockett. Lockett has 4 catches and 47 yards in his last 2 games. He hasn't finished inside the top 40 since week 2. This is what it's come to. Next, we have Sterling Shepard against Carolina. Now, dealing with a hamstring injury, I'm unsure if he plays, pretty much like the entire New York Giants wide receiver room. And that is all I got for you guys. Thank you for joining me for this video. If you have any questions, as always, drop them down below or hit me up on the Sleeper app. I would love to get back to you and answer your questions. If you are new or haven't quite got to it yet, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out and I appreciate it a bunch. This is Relentless Press. I am your host, Abriam Opatz, and we'll see you next time.